Hello everybody and welcome back to Rachel Vegetarian Foodies. Today we are going to learn how to make butter puff pastry, or better known to the Western world, Flaky puff pastry. To my knowledge they're both exactly the same, but the recipe that I've gotten this from comes from a baking book from England, or the UK at the very least. I'm pretty sure it's England. So I don't know whether they maybe call it butter puff over there, but it's basically exactly the same thing. It's very flaky, golden crispy pastry. And it has a very high butter content, which is, the same as the flaky puff pastry that we have here in New Zealand and Australia. So you're only going to need 2 ingredients for the butter paste, the first part of the pastry. So that's 340 grams of unsalted butter softened, plus your 5.5 ounces of French T550 flour, or just plain flour. So the way you're going to prepare this pastry is you make 2 halves of it first and then eventually combine it together. For the butter paste, it doesn't actually need to be made straight away, so even though the recipe I'm reading calls for it to be made first, I would actually suggest this gets made second, because what you're going to do with the dough is you're going to make the dough and leave it overnight. And the butter paste cannot be chilled apparently, but if you leave it out and you're in Australia like I am, or in remotely warm weather, there's a chance the butter's going to melt, seep out, and all sorts of other stuff. So this is the butter paste. You're literally just putting the butter and the flour together and combining it, and after that you will make the dough, which you will see soon. Now I tend to not use cling film anymore, but an old trick I used to do is wipe down a bench and stick the cling film over top, so that if you're rolling dough or kneading bread on top of it, the clumps won't get stuck to the bench and it won't be really difficult to clean. So you can do that, or if you like me and you use beeswax paper or whatever, you can put that down instead, just whatever suits you. Anyway, lay down the Glad wrap if that's what you're using, and then put your butter paste mixture, literally just the butter and the flour you've just combined, on top of the Glad wrap and squish it together into a slab or rectangle that is roughly 6 millimeters thick. At this point you are just going to wrap it up in the Glad wrap once you're done, and stick it away to the side. Now, as I say, even though the recipe says to make this first for some reason, as far as I can tell, this is my most used recipe from this UK baking book. I don't see the point of making the butter paste first. So do it however you want. You can do it the next day when the dough's ready and use it fresh. It really doesn't matter. Now for the dough, the actual bread dough, you want 2 cups, 4 ounces of the same flour, 4 egg yolks, 180 ml of spring water, recipe says bottled, and 2 teaspoons of Maldon Salt ground fine. Alright, so to start off the dough, you're going to put the flour, egg yolks, water and salt in a bowl and mix it all together. If absolutely necessary, you can add another teaspoon or 2 of water, but be really careful, the dough will soften on resting. What you want by the end of the dough being mixed together is a smooth but fairly tight dough. You will want to transfer to a lightly floured surface by this point and knead it for at least 10 minutes or until the dough is very smooth and elastic, so you're going to loosen it up by kneading it. Once you have reached the desired smoothness, etc., shape it to a bowl, wrap it in cling film or whatever it is that you use, and leave to rest for 1 hour or more, ideally overnight. You can just do it for 1 hour, but overnight is better. So here now is where it starts to get really interesting. You're going to prepare the surface of your counter/bench with Glad wrap or whatever it is you do and use, and you're going to either prepare your butter paste now or grab your butter paste from the day before, and this is where you're going to put part 1 of butter puff pastry and part 2 of butter pastry together. So you're going to start this off by placing the dough, the non-butter part, onto the surface and roll it out into a rough square about 8 millimeters thick. I cannot speak. Mine is very crude looking, I know, but at this point you're going to place the rectangle of butter paste in the center, and you're going to fold the corners of the dough over the top to cover the paste completely. You are then going to wrap in cling film again and rest in the fridge for 30 minutes. Now the reason for this is to keep the butter cold enough so that it doesn't get warm and start melting, because if it starts seeping through the dough and stuff, you've kind of lost it a bit and it won't turn out good. It also won't keep the flakes or layers for the pastry. So now, after the 30-minute wait in the fridge, the butter has been brought back to a colder temperature. It's chilled again, and you should be able to roll it a couple times more without it warming up so much that it begins to melt or seep through the dough. So what you're going to do is prepare your surfaces per normal. Roll the dough out, rolling away from you into a long rectangle. Make sure it's about 1 centimeter thick. For this next part, it gets a little bit tricky, so the butter can't be too stiff, but the dough still needs to be flexible enough for you to do this. So as you can see, you fold one end in by a 1/6, and then the other end in by a 1/6. Then you fold both ends over again by a 1/6 so that they meet in the center. Now fold the two together as if you were closing a book. Next, turn the dough so the fold is to one side. Roll it out gently away from you again into a long rectangle about the same length as before. What you're basically going to be doing is repeating the whole thing all over again. This is what creates the layers between the butter and the dough, making it super flaky, golden, and rich. Now this can be a little bit difficult, just because the layers may not want to stay on top of each other or may not want to stay level with each other, so just try to keep that all together as you're rolling it. I have gotten better with this as I've made this recipe more and more often, but it can be a little bit difficult. Now as you can see, we start the folding process again, so we're going to fold one end of the dough in by 1/3, then the other end in by 1/3, over the top of the first third. This is a single turn. Now again, to avoid the risk of the butter melting or getting too warm, we are now going to spread a sheet of cling film or whatever you use over a tray, place the dough on top and cover tightly with the cling film, leave in the refrigerator or a cool place for 1 hour. After the 1 hour, we are back again. So once again, prep your surface, same as normal. So place your dough on the surface and do a single turn. Now by that I mean literally everything that we just previously did. So you're going to be rolling it out away from you. You're going to be folding in the ends until it becomes a book. And then you're going to turn it again and roll it out and then put 1/3 over the other third. Everything exactly the same as we did before. Again, this is just repetitive because all we are doing now is slowly blending the butter and the dough together, but in layers. So they're not being mixed together or combined completely together. They're being folded, forever folded and combined so that they are layered and layered and layered, and they just keep on layering. So just for the sake of not constantly repeating it, once you have finished doing that single turn, you're going to follow it immediately by another single turn, which means you're doing the rolling out, the book, and the folded thirds all over again. After that, you're finally going to wrap it in cling film and leave in the refrigerator overnight before using, and then you're going to defrost it the next day and you're all ready to go. You can roll it out and use them whatever you want. It's perfect for either savory, which I believe is what I used it for this time, or desserts, flaky puff pies like berry pies, fruit pies, apricot pie. I know you're typically supposed to use short pastry, but my favourite is flaky / butter puff pastry, so I love using that for those types of pies because it's so good. I gotta say though, my favourite recipe for this pastry, because it's just so darn good, is a fish pie, which I've made a couple of times. And what the recipe for the fish pie calls for is a whole entire fish and then you encase it. But all I do is I get normal fish flakes and put all the seasonings and stuff in and just shape it into a fish and then simply put the pastry around it. And as you can see, I make out the eyes, I cut in the scales, put little fins on, and they look awesome. I've done it a couple of times. It's always a crowd pleaser, and it doesn't fail from absolutely making people gobsmacked by how awesome it looks.